I now call the February 6th, I'm sorry, I have cold medicine up to my earballs up here. So I now call the February 6th, 2018 regular council meeting to order. Would council members please denote your presence by depressing your yes switch?
All council members are present.
The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, excuse me, no one to excuse today. Abstain from that as well. Council meetings are televised and can be viewed on cable channel 192. Is there anybody young in there that would like to join me to the Pledge of Allegiance today? You guys want to join us for the pledge? Want to come up? Yeah. You want to start us off?
I pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the January 16, 2018 regular council meeting as published in the Casper Star Tribune on January 27, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Walsh, seconded by Councilman Johnson. Corrections? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passes.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the January 17, 2018 executive session.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins, second by Councilwoman Humphrey. Corrections? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote. Not yet.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the February 6, 2018 bills and claims as audited by City Manager Napier.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Huckabee, seconded by Councilman Johnson. Abstentions? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Please read the consent agenda titles.
Item 8A1A, establishing February 20th, 2018 as the public hearing date for consideration of the transfer of ownership interest in 3 retail liquor licenses. Retail liquor license number 18, retail liquor license number 3, and retail liquor license number 29. Item 8A1B, establishing February 20th, 2018 as the public hearing date for consideration of the transfer of ownership interest in 3 additional retail liquor licenses. Retail liquor license number 23, retail liquor license number 12, and retail liquor license number 15. Item 8A1C, establishing February 20th, 2018 as the public hearing date for consideration of the sale of city-owned property for economic development purposes pursuant to Wyoming State Statute 15-1-112B1, ID. And item 8A1D, establishing February 20th, 2018 as the public hearing date for consideration of the Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays Non-Discrimination Resolution.
Chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, establish the public hearing dates just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins, seconded by Councilman Johnson. Any abstentions or nay votes?
Nay on A1.
D.
8A1D.
Councilwoman Huckabee.
I abstain on 1A, 1, 2, and 3.
Councilman Hopkins. Councilman Johnson.
Nay on 8A1D.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be voting nay on item 8A1D.
Okay. Nay on D. Councilman Laird.
Nay on 8A1D.
And nay on 8A1D for me as well. Please cast your vote. Please Please record the vote.
With Councilmember Huckabee abstaining on item 8A1, was it 1A or B?
A, 1, 2, and 3,
A1, 2, and 3,
and also D.
and also D.
You mean A, B, C, and D?
And council members Walsh, Johnson, Morgan, Humphrey, Laird, Powell, and Pacheco voting nay on 8A1D. Motion passes except for 8A1D.
Thank you. Please read the consent ordinance on third reading by title only.
An ordinance granting a franchise to Resonant Communications LLC for the construction and operation of a cable system and repealing ordinance number 7-07.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on third reading the consent ordinance just read.
So move.
Moved by Councilman Johnson, seconded by Councilwoman Humphrey. Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
Alice.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Please read the consent ordinance on second reading by title only.
An ordinance amending section 17.12.124 towers of the Casper Municipal Code.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on second reading the consent ordinance just read.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Huckabee, seconded by Councilman Johnson. Please cast your vote. Councilman Hopkins.
Sorry.
That's all right. Please record your vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Please read the consent resolutions by title only.
Item 11A1, a resolution approving an amendment to the new Delta Edition subdivision agreement dated August 3, 1999. Item 11A2, a resolution approving the replat creating Meadowview Estates Edition Number 2, lots 24 and 25, Block 3. Item 11A3, a resolution authorizing an agreement with Sheet Metal Solutions for the Fire Station Number 1 Co-Rayvac Replacement Project. Item 11A4, a resolution accepting a water line easement from the Natrona County School District Number 1 for maintenance of water mains that serve the New Journey Elementary School. Item 11A5, a resolution authorizing a contract for professional services with CH2M Hill Engineers, Inc. for engineering services for the Sam H. Hobbs Wastewater Treatment Plant Motor Control Center Replacement Project. Item 11A6, a resolution authorizing an agreement with Trito Construction for the 17th Street Improvements South Poplar Street to College Drive project. Item 11A7, a resolution employing John Henley as a Casper City Attorney and authorizing execution of an employment agreement. Item 11A8, a resolution authorizing a contract for professional services with Engineering Design Associates for the Life Steps Building Fire Suppression and Alarms Replacements Project. Item 11A9, a resolution authorizing the acceptance of grant funds from the International Association of Chiefs of Police.
Chair would entertain a motion to adopt the consent resolutions just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins, seconded by Councilman Walsh. Any abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote. Sorry. Please record your vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Please read the consent minute action title.
Authorizing city staff to lower the contingency amount by $25,000 for the public safety radio towers.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent minute action agenda item just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Powell, second by Councilman Morgan. Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Thank you. So now is the time we invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak with the council to come forward. As stated on the first page of the agenda, we ask the following. Please state your name and address. Direct all questions and comments to me. No personal attacks on the staff or council will be tolerated. Council will not respond to personnel matters, and these will be referred to the city manager. Questions posed by speakers may or may not be responded to by the council members, and presentations will be limited to only 5 minutes, and the duplication of speakers will not be allowed, nor will time extensions be permitted. Hi there.
Hi, Lynn Nickel, 6321 Timberline Court in Casper.
Good evening.
Could I ask a point of clarification before I begin to make my statement? The action that you took earlier on 8A 1D,
Yes,
does that mean that this topic will not be part of the public hearing then?
correct.
All right. So with that in mind, I'm glad I came tonight, and I do appreciate you giving me the chance to speak to you. I want to speak to you with an understanding and just by saying up front that I want to speak to this discrimination resolution, not because I want anybody to be discriminated against, and in full acceptance of all people. I believe in a God and His Word that tells me He shows no favoritism, and He is a God of love and grace. And so I want that to preclude any comment that I make. I do have some concerns about the resolutions as they were sent to me by the city manager's office, specifically the resolution that mentions specific LGBT non-discrimination. It appears to me that I'm not sure what the purpose of that would be. We have laws on the books already about anti-discrimination. I'm not sure what the purpose of a resolution would be to affirm that, unless it is to actually set apart a segment of the community that is being specially recognized, and that really may not be about non-discrimination as much as it might be about showing favoritism toward a group in the community above others. It seems to me that as what I've read concerning this matter in the news and so forth has been about a perception that Wyoming and Casper may not be a welcoming place to the LGBT community. If it is a perception that we're dealing with, it's a dangerous kind of slippery slope to get into, because other people may perceive they're not been welcomed either. If there have been actual cases of discrimination against this community, this part of our community, then I would suggest that the laws need to be enforced at that point instead of a resolution by the council. I just feel like there is almost a setting aside of a special group of people by this resolution that on its face would make it sound like they are different than everybody else, not just included like everyone else. And so I would hate for us to be able to get into a place where that would happen. I think that the way the resolution, as I read it, is stated, it is that it uses terminology like, whereas the full inclusion and acceptance of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender citizens is fair and just. While I believe it's fair and just to treat all people equally, the word acceptance, inclusion, almost sets up a dichotomy of people who may not accept or may not believe because of moral or religious conviction that in that lifestyle. So I would really encourage the council to think very seriously about approving one that would set one segment of our society up against others or pull them out. I almost think it would create a landslide of other people in special interest group wanting to come before this same council with their own resolution that they feel like they've been discriminated against, or there's a perception that they've been discriminated against. And so I would really encourage this council to consider, rather than the specific resolution that mentions LGBT, there was a second resolution, as I understand it, that was more general in nature, did not mention one group of citizens over another. And I would encourage this council to consider approving a resolution like that, that does not set one part of the community against others or raise the level of approval for one segment of the population over another. And just be careful that my encouragement would be sure that you do what you do for all the citizens of Casper, not just special groups, and so that special interest groups don't begin to invade you now with all kinds of requests that they be considered as a special class of people as well.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Any questions? Okay. Thank you so much. Hi, Jackie.
Jackie Anderson, 116 and a half East 2nd Street. Obviously, you guys know I'm here. We are to discuss food truck issues again. I did send, and I hope that you all received, the Cheyenne stipulations and permits and regulations. We did have a meeting supervised by Carter this morning. Again, this is our third meeting as a group. And we have different people coming in, but it's the same consistent people all the time. With part of that conversation, the young gentleman brought up the fact that Cheyenne had already endorsed and supported and voted on in November all of their parking, mobile vending, food tents, trucks, all of that issue in November. And I did send that to you as a guideline because we were directed by the food truck people to have Cheyenne as a prototype for what you folks or what our city staff has to vote on and decide on. I did send up a Denver study or a Denver program, and obviously everybody said, well, Denver's too big. So Cheyenne is just perfect, and I believe Cheyenne is the first area that has these rules with food trucks. I think Jackson also has it. Every one of these studies and every one of these discussions end up with having a fee implemented, at least $75 per event. They have stipulations, definitely not during normal parking hours. The only stipulations for food trucks is to be surrounded by an event, which we have discussed in depth about creating. So with that, I would like this council at the next work session to suspend the food truck permits that Hauk, I guess that was presented by Councilman Walsh, to let the permits be active again. I'm asking you to suspend those until the city staff is finalized with their decisions and with their recommendation and guidance. I did confer with an attorney and am requesting that he be present at next work session just to clarify some of the things that the cities have done. I think one of my biggest concerns with you folks is that you've only have understood Sean Hauk's vision and what he feels is, bringing something that we desire downtown. I don't think you guys understand. I haven't seen any of you yet to come downtown on a Friday night at 5 o'clock and watch the half an hour of the food truck going around 3 times, 4 times. 2 weeks ago, a car was actually towed from a parking spot, not from the city, but from a private towing company. And lately, the food trucks have only been there for only an hour. So all of this effort for Friday and Saturday nights, they come in, they discover it's a slow night, and they leave. So with the car that was pulled 2 Fridays ago, they were there for an hour and 20 minutes. So I'm asking this council to consider suspending the permits. If it isn't tonight, I understand that. But if we can work on that at the next work session, I have talked to Councilman Johnson about presenting that there. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. It's a very frustrating process. It's very disheartening to know that this thing was suspended and then somebody thought it was the right idea to convince council to unsuspend it and to allow the chaos to continue. So, and there is a lot of chaos with it. We have a lot of people that aren't talking to each other. We're trying to work together, Dallas. We are. We've been blue in the face with trying to work with it. So hopefully look at the Cheyenne study, especially pages 5 and 6. It's very detailed about everything. And is there any questions?
Quick.
Jackie and I have had a pretty lengthy discussion, and I tend to agree with her that I do think that suspending licenses until the city staff comes up with a solution is the right answer, because things are getting worse. And so I'm kind of curious as to where we're at as far as progress on anything.
Go ahead, Sid.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilman. The speaker is correct. We have had a number of discussions with stakeholders in the area. And indeed, we have taken a lot of feedback with regard to the draft that we have put together dealing with mobile vendor parking permits. My impression is that with the feedback collected, which I anticipate collecting even more in some one-on-one conversations that have yet to happen, and we would put that together in a proposal that would bring forward to the council here probably this spring and have you give us direction one way or the other.
And follow
Yeah,
up.
go ahead.
I read the Cheyenne ordinance, and in my opinion, it's extremely fair for all parties. I'm not saying that we need to copy it directly, but we need to obviously do what works for Casper. But if it's not going to be until the spring, I see this getting more and more out of hand. So I do think a suspension of all licenses needs to happen until then.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Councilwoman Huckabee.
I agree with Sean. I think we need to suspend all permits at this current time. I know I spent a great deal of time at the end of last week and over the weekend dealing with these issues, while I'm also trying to plan a funeral. And quite honestly, I'm tired of the issue. I'm tired of hearing about it. I'm tired of getting emails about it. I'm tired of people not being able to act like adults and handle these things. And I think that since that has not been possible to come to some kind of civil discussion, I think they need to be suspended. I also think that the Cheyenne permitting process is fair. Honestly, if Mr. Hauk wanted to have food trucks out in front of his business, perhaps he should have selected a different location that would be a little bit more amenable to that happening, but he didn't, so.
Councilman Laird.
What I'd prefer to see is that you all get together and come up with the rules that you can all live with and hand them to the city manager. But what I'm really hearing is you just want to do away with food trucks, period.
That's incorrect, sir.
I don't see anybody telling me how they're going to do this then.
What I have encouraged in these discussions, instead of doing the whole, and this is another thing I'd like to take off, the planning that's going through, we're deciding on 2 or 3 spaces. We have talked about having events. I have sent you a list of all the events that we can do in every month of the year if we choose to. We have the 20-year CNFR this year. We could do a 4 or 5 day event. We have our fair and rodeo, which, by the way, after, it's not like the old days, and this town dies. Everybody goes back to work or goes home. That's another opportunity. We have our Balloon Fest. Most notably, we have the Art Walk and the Eclipse that has been an example that this can work together if we work all together, not just for the benefit of 2 businesses, which is what is happening now. I have pled with the food trucks, and they all agree that we should be working together and talking together. But I can't help if Mr. Hauck's business plan was incomplete. I can't help that. But what it's doing is that it's affecting our revenue stream. And the gentleman from the fish truck came to my restaurant after the meeting today. And so I could give him some insight, and he says, we don't need to pay, we aren't going to make any money. We're talking about $25, and they don't want to pay it. $25 are 2 sandwiches. And they sell $9,000, $10,000 worth of product in a weekend. So he also was the one that told me to call Cheyenne, told us to call Cheyenne. He did tell us at the meeting this morning that Cheyenne was allowing parking in the streets. That's incorrect. Miss Wendy down at Cheyenne said absolutely not. They have to be surrounded with an event. And Dallas, that's what I want to do. I want us to have an event. I want us to start with Art Walk, and then maybe Friday at 5 o'clock, shut the streets down until Saturday at midnight. We've had these discussions, and Sean does not want to go with it. So I get that you're tired of all of our emails and phone calls and all that. But if this wasn't important or critical enough for us, Dallas, I wouldn't be putting in close to 16 hours today being on the phone with Rapid City, with Denver, with all of these other cities that have already figured out our problem, and they're trying to help us out. So I am trying to help city staff. I'm trying to help everybody out. I want it to be fair for everybody. Right now, it isn't. I'm going to tell you, the second week in September on a Friday afternoon or Friday lunchtime, the fish hook truck came in. The line was clear around a day that I normally make $600 to $700. We have to start off strong on our weekend. I made $60. That does not happen. I've never had a $60 day until the food trucks came in. So we have bent over backwards trying to help with a solution. The only thing that's going to be a solution is what you saw in Cheyenne's guide, which is they have events. They have their Frontier Days and they close the streets. It was mentioned that Sheridan and Buffalo do the same thing. Sheridan closes their streets for their festivals for 5 days. So all these are dealing with food trucks and street closures. They work hand in hand. You cannot allow a food truck to take up 3 commerce revenue producing parking spaces during premium commerce hours, and that includes until 9 o'clock at night. That affects the Wonder Bar, that affects Branding Iron, that affects JS Restaurant, that affects Don Juan, it affects every restaurant downtown. We don't have the population to support all these wonderful choices that everybody loves. We don't. The bigger restaurants are struggling hard. The smaller ones, you know, we have to keep it together. And the only way that we can keep it together is being good neighbors. And that's one thing that Sean has not done. We've tried. The pints and politics thing, we didn't want to go to that because of all the bullying and because he has 3 employees that have done things on the internet, social media wise, we felt like it was going to be antagonistic. We didn't go. Heck, we were told on the day of the work session where this was permitted that not to worry, Jackie, don't go to the work session, don't go to the council, nothing on the food truck issue is going to be voted on. That was incorrect. You brought it up after that pints and politics, and I'm sorry if I'm getting a little emotional, but we feel like the wool's been pulled over our eyes. And by the way, when I found that happened, it was a day and a half later that Carter told me about it. So I'm just wanting to work together, but that's not how Sean works. Friday is when he calls you guys down, gets the permits, and puts it on the internet on Friday. He knows we can't do anything about it on a Friday. So, like I said, everything, you're saying to get along with him, he's done everything to undermine anything that we could possibly do to work together.
Okay, let's move forward a little bit. Councilman Hopkins, you wanted to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It looks to me like one of the real issues we have here, it's the difference between community events and a one-shot deal, one guy parking a food truck. When you read the Denver ordinance, literally, they do not allow food trucks in the central business district in Denver. Now, that includes about a 30 or 40 square block area in Denver. We have maybe a 6 square block area to do our community events like you mentioned, CNFR, the Balloon Fest, Crazy Days, and so it's a real problem. And I really think that the Cheyenne ordinance, and by the way, you're about 60 feet compared to the 100 feet that Cheyenne ordinance has from the easiest pedestrian walk, as I recall the way it's worded. So it's a workable system. And the Denver ordinance is also very good. I mean, they've been dealing with this for a long time compared to what we've been dealing with it. So I think it's an issue that we need to do to be fair to our downtown businesses. And I'm not saying that just because I'm Ward 1. When somebody has invested their time and effort in a downtown business and been there for years, and some of them have not been there for years, but I did a count when we were doing the curb thing where you wanted to take curbs and take parking places. I did a count, and from Collins Drive, going 2 blocks to the north and a block or 2 east and west, there were 14 different restaurants at one time or another. Today, there are not 14 restaurants, but we still have that potential. We've got another couple coming in that are in the works right now. So I think we need to address this sooner than later. So.
Councilman Johnson.
I don't think we're going to solve this tonight.
Yeah.
What I think we need to do is suspend all licenses until the problem is solved. Because right now it's obviously causing an even bigger issue, and it's going to get worse.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
I hate a lot of rules and regulations. I don't want to, I saw ones that were given to us. I really don't want to impose heavy-duty rules and regulations on anybody in Casper for anything. I do have a belief that the manager can handle this problem. I mean, that's why he was hired. I believe he can handle it, and when he tells me he's had meetings and he comes to us with something that doesn't overwhelm me like a federal register that's this thick that you got to hire lawyers, as Jackie says, to read, and it's a one-page deal that says how this is going to be run, it's going to be fair, that's most likely what I'll vote for. Of course, I'd really vote for one where you and Sean come in here and say, here's what we think's fair, and you handed it to us. I think that'd be lovely, but I don't think that's going to happen. So our manager is going to settle the dispute, at least initially, I hope, and then we can do something with it. And I know that it isn't working, and I know that we have to do something about it, and we will. And when is another question. I don't know. I do think that on this thing that we're doing now, we made a mistake on allowing it to start at 5. I think we should have, if we're going to allow it, it should start when everybody's closed down there, or the general sphere of people are closed. Because what time do you close?
Close at 2, but Dallas, we have restaurants
Charlie's
that are
the only
open
one.
until
He stays
9.
open late, and then who else stays open late?
We have all of the downtown night restaurants that are open until 9.
Because right now, our biggest problem, in my view, the way I'm analyzing this problem, is we have two things happening. One, we have to deal with the parking fairly and justly for all of our people. Secondly, what are we going to do with food trucks? And I don't know yet.
And I agree, and I know that you don't like ordinances or rules, but unfortunately, because we don't have those, this is the chaos that is created because of that.
Yeah, but other people are doing things down there, Jackie, that aren't according to
Other
rules.
people are doing things down there that the city of Denver and the city of Cheyenne have regulated, and I mean, they have to pay a $75 permit, so they have.
No, and we're going
And
to,
that's not
we're
complicated.
going to address this, but, you know, it's,
So here's what I would like to do. Do you want to make a comment, Jesse, and then I'll?
Maybe I'll wait till what you say that you might already clear it up. But go
Okay. Here's what I'd like to do, and this may not, I'm going to try to do a compromise here. I'd like to wait till the work session next week to have this conversation and for us to make a decision on whether we want to cancel or suspend that. I'd like to wait, and instead of doing it during the public conversation right now, I think it'd be better and more appropriate at the work session next week. Jackie?
The only concern I have with that, Your Honor, is the fact that people like Dewey and the Wonder Bar and all that are having to deal with another weekend of trying to recapture revenue that is lost because the permit is on now. I don't understand why you guys cannot suspend it today, and at work session, we can discuss the other plans. I think, like I said, if we can suspend it, it would help us out a lot. It's a lot of stress every weekend.
excuse me, Jackie, is Mr. Houck here to speak to it?
I don't believe so, huh?
So I wouldn't want to suspend it unless he was down here and he got his say. I think we got to hear everybody's say, plus it wasn't on the agenda to suspend anything.
He didn't allow me to be part of that conversation.
Hold it, I can't be bound by what either he or you do. What I want to do is be fair to both of you. If he came down here and wanted something and you weren't here, I'd tell him the same thing. So I go with you, Mr. Mayor, that we go till next week, because I don't think it would be fair to do anything because not proper notice was given to all the parties who have to speak.
And I know what you're saying, Jackie. I get it's another weekend, but I feel like
That's not what I was going to say.
I know what you're saying, but I know what you're saying when your frustration. But what I'm saying is that it gives us an opportunity for us to, all members here, to be able to sit down and look at those ordinances that you sent us from Cheyenne, to be able to look at that and be able to say, okay, what is it and what are our next steps, to have a more deep conversation about it instead of coming up and having it on the dais up here. And that was where I was trying to come from.
And I get that. What my concern is, you just said, give you guys consideration. There was no consideration when that was brought up to a work session. You guys weren't prepared for it, other than the people that brought it up. And then we weren't notified about it. So when you're saying, well, we're going to give Sean an opportunity, why didn't you give us an opportunity when we were told that nothing was going to be voted on that day? So,
I know, I see where you're coming from, absolutely.
It almost seems like you're taking a special license, or Sean is taking a special license because of the relationship that he has with you in Wyo City and the website and all of that. You guys aren't giving us that same consideration, and yet you're asking us to do that for Sean's consideration.
Maybe we made a mistake there, but I don't like keep making the same mistake twice.
Okay. Thank you for that.
I want to
Dale.
give you the full extent of your argument. I understand what you're saying, dealt with. But tonight, we weren't prepared to deal with this issue, as you can see from our agenda.
Right.
So we'll have to be more careful of that in the future. But believe me, if he came in, I'd say bring Jackie down here. I'm not going to vote on anything.
I wish that was considered when you guys had done that and voted.
So I apologize for that not happening. But I can't go back in time and fix it. I can just go forward is about all I can do.
Well, if it's for the pleasure of this council to continue this discussion at the work session next Tuesday, obviously I would go for it.
I know where Councilman Johnson's coming from. I just wanted to see where everybody else, if we wanted to move forward, if that was okay with everybody. Councilman?
I agree with your suggestion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I agree with your suggestion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So we will discuss that. It'll be, Mr. City Manager, we can put that on the work session to talk about it.
So Michael Lansing will be representing our group that day.
Thank you, Jackie. Appreciate it. Hi, Dale.
Hi. Dale Zimmerly, 3035 Bel Air Drive. Dallas, you just said something you believe in, everybody's having a chance to speak on a subject. But yet the council just voted to not have a public hearing on a matter that was on the agenda. You're backing up, man. I think we all should have a say. Charlie, you said on the radio Monday morning that the reason you're shutting the meeting down is because you're already going to vote yes, so let's shut the hearing down so nobody can talk on it because it's going to stir up the pot, is basically what I heard on the radio. I think you're poking a bear here. Some of you on this council say that you're Christians and you believe what the Bible says and you believe what God has to say about things. So I'm going to read something from the Bible, from 1 Corinthians 6, verse 9. Don't you know that people who are unjust won't inherit God's kingdom? Don't be deceived. Those who are sexually immoral, those who worship false gods, adulterers, both participants in same-sex intercourse, thieves, the greedy, drunks, abusive people, and swindlers won't inherit God's kingdom. If this ordinance passes or this proclamation passes, you're saying that it's okay to be homosexual. The Bible says it's not. I'm saying as a Christian, you cannot vote yes for it. As a Christian, you have to follow what God says. As a Christian, you have to read your Bible, and the Bible doesn't lie. I guess that's all I got to say.
I have a comment. A couple things I agree with you on. And one thing, though, when they decided to cancel that hearing, I think the thought is it's so divisive, and we get letters from everybody, as you can imagine, and so I know what everybody's position is, and they've lectured me and all of that, and I feel like I understand it well, truthfully. So, and I mentioned to Councilman Powell that if you cancel it, we're not going to hear the last of it. I've always been in favor of public hearings, although I did vote for this one because it does seem to be divisive, and people are pretty well set in how they're viewing this issue. And as you know, this is merely a resolution. This has no law in force. In fact, our city website contains most of this language anyway already. We don't discriminate here in terms of hiring and all of that on the basis of everything that the PFLAG wants in that resolution.
So why do it?
Well, that's another question. You'll have to, I can only speak for myself. I redrafted a resolution that I think covers everything.
I like it.
But I understand, too, why they want it. I understand, too, why they want it, and I could probably quote you some scriptures. And so I am going to quote one to you that I'm really trying to live with in my life. It's a code to me, It's deeper than a code. It comes from the Bible. And that is to treat other people like I myself want to be treated. I can't argue that with you. I'm not going to argue that with you, but I believe in that very heavily. So I have that guiding me. And so I can tell you, this is a tough thing, because when I look at it from the standpoint of a city councilman and what our city principles are, if this was an ordinance, it would be different for me, totally different for me, because that is a law I wouldn't impose on anybody. This isn't a law that we're talking about. It's a simple resolution that says this is how the city feels about how it runs its business. It isn't telling you what to do. It isn't telling you whether you have to bake a cake for somebody. It isn't doing any of that. And I think a lot of people have given it more weight than it carries. And maybe there should be a proposal for an ordinance, and maybe it should be put out for public vote. That's more what I would be in favor with. I don't want to impose my personal values on this kind of thing on anyone. That's how I personally feel about it. So what you say, I hear what some of the PFLAG people say. I hear that too. I know they're in pain for various reasons. They're parents of gay people. I've seen it. I'm 70 years old. I've seen all this. And quite frankly, I don't even want to have to vote on this.
Sir, I agree with you on a lot of that, but there's a lot of things I don't personally like and agree with. But then I got to look at the Bible, and I got to go follow that, not what I think, because there's a lot of bad things inside there. But Christ has taken care of that, and now I follow him.
So I'm going to tell you something else I believe. I believe that God created all things. You go read that in Genesis all day long, right? I believe God created atheists for some reason. I believe he created gay people for some reason. Don't ask me what it is. I have no answer to that, but that's what I believe, because he created everything. So you have to live with that too, along with a lot of other scriptures we can talk about. And now, who can understand it? But maybe God himself. But it sure isn't me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dale. Anybody else? Good evening.
Dave Nania, 113 South Benton. I seem nervous, I am. I'm not a public speaker, believe me. I have a concern on this non-discrimination resolution. Not so much for the resolution, but I view, if we're labeling people, which is a divisive thing, and you're talking the gay community in Wyoming is 3.5% of our population. I hate to see anybody be labeled or put into categories. And I think if you folks do that, that you're opening up a can of worms. As far as labeling, I would label myself an American and a Marine. And I went into the service to make sure that everybody had the same and equal rights. Our Wyoming Constitution addresses it in a couple places on the equal rights laws. I think it's covered. The thing that scares me is that as a city council, you're taking away the voice of the people to come in and actually discuss this with you. I realize that it would probably be a terrible discussion and hard for everybody here to deal with, but at the same time, I believe the American people and the citizens have a right to come and talk to you about it. Any questions?
Any questions? Yeah, Councilman.
I don't think we're taking away your voice. Everybody has a right to call me, to call any one of us, to email any one of us, to send any one of us a letter, to come to a council meeting and talk to us after the meeting. And that's what's happening. I mean, I'm getting floods of emails and letters and all kinds of stuff coming in. I just don't think a public hearing is necessary for this sort of thing, mostly because of what Councilman Laird talked about. But I wouldn't say that we were taking away your voice at all.
Well, and I would agree with you on that. But some of us that are getting a little older and don't understand computers so well or something, to email you and stuff.
The physical address is also on the website.
Okay. But I really would like to see an open discussion on this. Yes, sir?
Yeah, go ahead, Councilman Walsh.
How you doing, Dave?
Good, sir. Yourself?
You're doing just fine with the public speaking. I voted against the public hearing because I truly believe this. It will not be a civil demonstration of each point. I do not think that's what will happen in this room, and I think that this will be so divisive that people will attack each other. I'm not worried about us. What will happen in the audience, what will happen when they walk out there, and I don't think it'll be pleasant and productive. We've had mountains and mountains of information and personal meetings with people, and if it seems like we're sidelining what you've got to say, I think it would be difficult for me to hear another viewpoint either way for a different perspective, but I don't think it would be productive for individuals that came up and spoke, because I think they would be personally attacked one way or another, and I feel certain that would happen, and I don't think that's good.
Well, I would agree with you on that. But at the same time, we have plenty of police. I'm sure you have a connection. We get them down here, and, you know, the people that are causing problems, let's...
Here's the last thing I want to see is the police dogs and OC come into a council room and start clearing the place. So if we can avoid that, I think it's best.
Yeah, and I understand that, but I really have a deep-seated belief that people need to be able to stand up here and speak their minds to you. You know, you guys have been elected, and we respect everybody in your opinion, but I think the respect needs to go both ways, and to where you have an open discussion. And I know it'd be tough, but
I have a comment, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
I voted not to have the discussion, although I had a very bad gut feeling about it. That's all I can tell you. I'd like to change my vote right now. I don't think I can under our Roberts Rules of Orders, but I really would like to see a public hearing. I wish we'd change it. I knew it in my guts. I bet if I asked everybody in there to raise their hand on who all thinks we should have a public hearing, I bet almost everybody out there would raise their hand. And so maybe the council can reconsider this.
maybe you could,
I hate doing that to them, but they expect me to do weird things every now and then. But I do believe that this is our job. This is our job to have public hearings. I mentioned that to the mayor when we were talking about doing this to begin with. And I'm like everybody. I just don't want a big divisive hearing where you got everybody angry at each other and nobody's going to change anybody's minds. But it's we're Americans.
yes, sir, I understand. But being the council, you guys can, you could delay this or whatever and have a public hearing if you so choose. As a citizen, I would really encourage it. I think, I guess the main point I'm getting at is that if we start enacting resolutions or laws that single out groups of people for race, religion, sexual preference, doesn't matter, that we're going to have a mess. And this is Casper, Wyoming. You know, we don't want to be New York or California or, you know, whatever. They have some major problems, and we don't need them. I really believe that.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Thanks for coming up and speaking.
My name is Rob Peterson. Address is 3150 Industrial Way. I did not come prepared to speak tonight because I was under the assumption there would be a public time to speak about this 8A1D non-discrimination clause, but, so can I ask a couple of questions of clarification? Just
Sure.
So when the vote was to not have that, does that mean that the issue is still going to be voted on, but just by the council?
Correct.
Okay. Well, I have a grave concern about that. And one of the concerns that I heard up here was that there was a fear that people would not be able to state their positions with civility and such. But what I've heard tonight has been just the opposite. I've heard 3 or 4 people speak very kindly, registering their concerns in a very polite way. And I would like to do the same thing. I'm just very concerned that this is a step towards an agenda that could create a group that is discriminated against. We've seen in the past businesses that were just discriminated against because they would not serve marriage with a cake or something like that. And I think that is the concern that I personally have as a pastor of a church, is that this would create myself being discriminated against from holding a biblical Christian worldview. I've had people come to my church who were men who wore dresses, and I shook their hand and said, hey, you're welcome here, but then I stood up and preached the Word of God in a loving way. And my concern is that up until now, we've been able to shake hands, and but if this resolution passes, to me, it's the first step in an agenda that would put people who hold to a biblical Christian worldview at a disadvantage. I've always heard sometimes, don't worry about drawing a line. It's more the direction you're going. So I just need to register my concern that this could be a tricky deal. I don't know.
Any questions?
Any questions for me of why I feel this way? Yes.
Yeah. Councilwoman.
Help me understand what this secret agenda might be.
Well, I have heard that when a state law can't be passed, that there's an agenda to get a whole bunch of communities and cities to pass resolutions, and then you can go back with a little more bite and try to get a state law passed. Say, well, 90% of our communities in the state have these resolutions. It just makes it that much easier for then the state law to be passed, which would be an ordinance, which would actually have some teeth to it, and then would put people who hold to a biblical Christian worldview again at a position to be discriminated against.
Any other questions? Comments? Thank you for coming up.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Anybody else?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Carrie Relaford, 7784 Palatine, Evansville. I don't know if that counts.
Sure, you're welcome here,
It's a suburb of Casper, right?
but you only have 2 minutes instead of 5.
You know, Congressman Laird, I agree with you that, you know, the Bible says to love your neighbor as yourself. You know, if you love yourself, then you're going to treat everybody else kindly. But I also agree that people can have a tendency to get out of hand and let their emotions get the best of them and not talk in a succinct, calm manner. But my question is, of course, this is on the 8A1D. We opened our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. We're all taught that as little kids, with liberty and justice for all. Mayor, you said that the city already has ordinances regarding non-discrimination. So why is this being addressed for a special interest group? I'm sure you guys are all busy enough without reinventing the wheel to protect somebody that's already covered under all. Liberty and justice for all. So that's my question tonight for the council.
Questions, comments?
I That's a pretty hard question. I think that in looking at all people, the greatest among us and the littlest among us have an equal voice.
I agree with that.
So when I see folks come in here that are parents of gay children, lesbian children, and I see pain in their faces, and they're asking for something, I don't want to discriminate against their asking. And I understand the difference legally between an ordinance and a resolution. I don't think most of our residents do. We're not asked to pass a law about this. We're asked to recognize a group of people specifically, which we do already on our website. I would suggest we just put this on our website without any vote of any resolution, because that's what we're doing anyway. We don't discriminate here in hiring practices if someone is a gay or lesbian or transgender. We just don't do it. But I don't, I have certain religious beliefs myself, and I'm going to follow those. And I'm a lawyer, so I'm going to follow the law as well. And I don't like the fact that people in the law have said that we have to keep the golden rule out of my courtroom, because I think people would be far better off if we lived with the golden rule.
Oh, I agree with that.
So I think just like you can come down here and say your piece, you've got a resolution, you can put it forward and we'll look at it. I think anybody has that right to do that. Now, there's 9 people here from varying backgrounds. Some of them, I'm the one with the least experience. And I went along with not having this meeting, and I regret that, actually. Because I do believe in the public speaking their mind and their piece, and me listening to it, because I might change my mind about how I look at this. Because I've done that in the past, where people say, well, you have your mind made up, and little do they know, there's just a swirl going on about this issue, because I think that it is a biblical issue. It's also just something that we have to do under our law with respect to the city government. But I'm not going to tell somebody out there who he can bake a cake for or can't bake a cake for. I don't think that's my job, at least with this resolution. So that's my thinking. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Not really, because like I said, we already have that on the books, that liberty and justice for all. I have a 7-year-old grandson who is being bullied on the school bus. That's not right, and everybody knows that. You don't pick on people. Unfortunately, as people, we have a tendency to pick on people that are different from us, and that's universal across the board. People who are different from you, you pick on them. But if we already have a resolution or a law, an ordinance, I'm not a lawyer, but I do understand the difference between the ordinance and the resolution. If we already have it as an ordinance that liberty and justice for all, I guess the thing that's confusing me is, why do we need to start separating out, okay, well, everybody gets treated the same and these guys really get treated the same? That doesn't make sense to me. That's the part that's confusing me. It seems to me like you're just rehashing the same thing that's already been settled.
And that's one way of looking at it, for sure. I did prepare a different resolution that covers all people without naming them. But I can see why they want it named. I can see why they would like to have it specified, and I don't think they are asking truthfully for special treatment. I think they're asking just to be recognized that they're humans as well. I did send a note back to someone who's asking for that resolution, and the people that are the most discriminated against, in my mind, in Wyoming, are natives. Yes. And they're not in that resolution. And I think we ought to have a resolution that says we don't discriminate against natives.
But we already do.
Well,
with the fair treatment of all.
I agree, but if you want to start talking about different things, I had a guy send me a deal Sunday during the Super Bowl saying, Dallas, I want a resolution to treat fairly fat old white lawyers. because everybody knows that people don't much care for lawyers. So then I said, oh, I said, well, now you're not enjoying the game, are you? Because I get that. I get that from my friends who are of different ethnic groups saying similar things to me. And what they're really saying is, we're all the same.
Sure, and that's the problem. If you start naming one special interest group, then you have to name other special interest groups, and then it becomes cumbersome. What about people without hair? We're not allowed to make fun of them. Or people with gray hair, That's my concern, is that you guys are reinventing the wheel, and you have enough to do without reinventing the wheel.
Thanks, we appreciate your comments. ID.
Reverend D. Lundberg, 142 North Wilson Street. Lots of legitimate, on the surface, comments tonight. I would start with the biblical piece. For starters, you were not elected to be our religious leaders. And there is not any one agreement across the Christian spectrum on this issue. And so we can't say, as Christians, this is the way it's supposed to be. There's contradictions in the Bible. There's much more talk about tolerance and love your neighbor and created in God's image as we are. So we can't use the Christian argument. Because there's lots of passionate Christians that love church, love Bible, love God, that feel that this issue should pass. Now, as far as special consideration, the policy that you have online does state different populations: women, religion, race. And this resolution has never been meant to be anything more than adding two things to the existing. Why? Why do we do this? Of course we're supposed to love everybody and not discriminate against anybody. But that's not the reality. It sounds really la-la, fluffy, warm and fuzzy, kittens and rainbows, but that's not the reality. And the reason people get named in those, and the reason you don't take people's names out once they've been recognized, it's about something we all want in our lives. And religion is already covered. So nobody's going to discriminate against anybody in here because they don't agree with me. They're already covered. People, women, people of color, Native Americans, absolutely, but they're already in there under race and religion. They're covered. If you want to add them, awesome. People have worked for centuries to be validated. We all need validation in our lives for our pain, for our troubles. Now, there is a 3.5% GLBT population on some statistics, and anybody that's ever taken a statistics class knows statistics are wrong. There's a whole lot of people that don't answer yes for obvious reasons. And we're looking at more like 9% of your population. Your teachers, your pastors, your plumbers, you name it. The reason that we asked in the first place was because we just want validation that the discrimination is real. And it is real. And no one should be discriminated against. I agree. But naming is one of the most healing, powerful things we do as a country. To right wrongs. To be fair. to understand that there are populations, because you bothered to list them in the policy, that are more likely to face discrimination. I don't care about this whole cake baker thing personally. I think it's stupid. If the cake baker wants to discriminate, fine, I won't buy my cake there. I'd rather know. But when it comes to housing, when it comes to employment, when it comes to health care, we have to protect those things for everyone. Any questions? I wasn't actually going to speak tonight, so.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dee. Anybody else? Hi.
David Reed, 201 North David. We'll just leave it at that. I'm not here for the other conversation, but
That's all right.
God bless America. And my concern about the police department, the shaping up of it, and how, well, there's still some individuals who are still stalking or targeting individuals who they feel is, you call them colored criminals or whatever. But also with this, I like to take the damn blinders off of them. Seems to me that there's too many of them walking around with only one focus. Who's got the drugs? I made a call a few years back, December 18th, 2017, and I want this to be brought out. I gotta get rid of this. I'm going to deliver you guys some of my dramatic stress I've been carrying around with. 2018, I made a call because I witnessed somebody getting abducted. The officer was so lovely and kind to listen to me, but he wasn't listening to me at all. He was talking to somebody else on the radio. Oh, by the time everything was done, they forgot about the call, what the main thing was, why I called the fuckers up, excuse my language.
I don't think we need to tolerate that.
I apologize, but they forgot the reason why we called them up. It wasn't even brought up. The focus became, I was messed up. I must have been on drugs. I had to be on drugs because that kind of stuff doesn't happen in Casper.
Chief.
Now, that occurred to me. And at that time, there was another one that came up, another officer that came up in second. And he concerned himself following the other officer's play. And they were just, because I did have my self-possession, I was, of course, I got searched because I was acting funny. But the case of the abduction never got brought up. Never was I asked again later on about this individual. And there was 2 vehicles that took that one person. They was very professional about what they were doing. They had a buffer unit in the abducting vehicle. But I just like getting smited out during that. I felt as if I got smited out and being able to bring it up.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate it, for coming forward and expressing that. We appreciate that.
Are you excusing me?
Are you finished?
Almost. But I feel that there may be some shaping up still that needs to be done within the system. Your discussion I heard about you wanting to have it to where police and the community have a little bit more interaction. Well, unless there's a way that the people of the community can trust those people who are in authority, I don't think it's going to happen. So, I mean, after that experience, I'll never see a cop the same.
Any questions Comments? Thank you so much. Anybody else? Okay, at this time, we'll ask council members to bring forward any relevant concerns or items of interest. And we'll start over here with you, Councilman Morgan. Going to do a little...
Thank you. A number of things that I actually want to say. I wish I could have said them before the public comment portion, but I'd like to start, here. Just in terms of stopping, I guess, the public hearing, people still have every opportunity to speak at the public comment portion. The reason that I voted no isn't to take that away. It's primarily because it's an opinion that we're going to offer through a resolution. It's opinion of the 9 members that are elected city council people. And to make it a public hearing, I think you're making it possibly something that it's not. It's not an ordinance or any sort of law that we have in place. It's an opinion of this body. We heard tonight, you're targeting one group, you're segregating a group only to put them, either on a pedestal or giving them preferential treatment, and that's not the case either. And if you actually read the resolution, towards the end of the resolution, it says, it is the policy, now there be it resolved by the governing body of the city of Casper, Wyoming, that the city of Casper in regular session duly assembled, it is the policy of the city to reject discrimination of any kind and to respect the inherent worth of every person. That's where it ends, every person. Or it goes on talking about other groups, but every person. It's right there in the resolution, the very end of it. It's not giving any preferential treatment to anybody. It's a group that came to this council that identifies discrimination as it stands today. There are instances where people can't even get married. I think it kind of coincides to a certain degree with the civil rights movement that you saw in the 60s. The Loving family, for instance, on the East Coast, they couldn't even be married, and they actually arrested him in his own bed at night because an interracial couple was married. So, you see a group that's marginalized and that still has those types of struggles taking place. And I have no issue saying that I'm not going to discriminate against anybody. I'm not trying to take that away from anybody, and I'm certainly not taking that public comment portion away from anyone whatsoever. If you want to discriminate, great, go ahead. I had a police ride-along and some biker guys that had swastikas on their vests. Great, more power to you. I don't think they should be arrested. They didn't commit any crime whatsoever. They're protected. Go ahead and have your First Amendment right. We're not trying to take that away with an ordinance saying that you can't call anybody a bad word or you support one group over another. So I think it's important that people understand that, and it's also important that the actual resolution that was presented by PFLAG Group says right in the last paragraph. Moving on towards food trucks, I do understand that it's an issue. At the same time, I think we need to address it with, sidewalk cafes. If we're going to allow cafes in the summer months, that's going to take up 3 parking spaces. Is that going to take away, revenue in your eyes too for something taking away parking? We can't just target food trucks, for instance. I think we really need to look at the big picture here. Whether it's a guy pushing a cart down a city sidewalk trying to sell hot dogs or tacos or whatever. We got to look at the whole issue and try to grapple with that as it stands. And I was at Frontier Saturday, for example. I think the food truck was there for possibly an hour. I wasn't there for very long. So, and I think it was after business hours, so it was around 6. So, after 6, people can park there for longer than 2 hours because then it resets, and then that's when we have people who are addressing parking and writing tickets for people that are there for longer than 2 hours at that point. So it's a tough issue. We need to look at it as a whole, and I think it's also going to match closely with how we address sidewalk cafes that will take parking spaces. welcome, Mr. Henley, the city attorney. I appreciate you applying for the position. I look forward to working with you. Caught me off guard, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry.
I attended the Natrona County Prevention Coalition meeting today. It was a good meeting. They have family game night that's taking place this Friday. So if you can attend, it's a substance-free event for families. And Science Zone is also going to be there where you can actually make your own games too. So it should be a pretty fun event. They were pretty happy to hear about the Handle with Care. And there is someone there that also deals with domestic disputes and taking kids in at odd hours, and they might try to reach out to the chief of police and also the superintendent for some of those special cases to see if they can help out too. I had a coffee with your councilman for Boy Scouts, and it was great seeing the young kids there taking part and trying to earn their special badge, and they had a couple priceless responses in terms of when I asked, how many or how much money do we put towards the police department budget, for instance, and one kid responded $6,000, and another one $300 a year. So, anyways, it was great seeing our youth attend that, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilman. Councilwoman Humphrey.
Quick question for our acting city attorney right there. Do we normally have a public hearing on a resolution?
Your Honor, it depends on the type of resolution being proposed. So it's not a yes or no answer. It just depends if the statute requires it and if council wants it. Council can choose to have it at their discretion.
Okay. I also supported not having a public hearing on this topic because I think that this is a topic that you either love it or hate it, and you're not going to change your mind. And I think it's pretty clear that you guys all have your mind and your beliefs set in what you believe in, and I totally respect that. But I don't think a public hearing is productive, and I think that people have had lots of opportunities to speak their minds on this topic through email, phone calls, down here at the end of the meeting. So I don't think anything can be gained by beating this to death anymore at this point. So I just want everybody to know where I stand, because I think it's important you know where I stand. So I'm going to support the resolution, and I guess if I'm not a Christian, then I'm not a Christian. I also am very hesitant to start interfering in the food truck issue. I did go down Saturday night and check it out. I actually feel like this maybe isn't necessarily a parking issue, but more of a revenue issue and a personality clash, and I hope that we don't have to intervene, but I parked in the parking garage. I walked. I wasn't worried about parking. It was cold. It was windy, like normal, but that didn't faze me. I even wore high heels, and I didn't fall down, so that's a bonus. I don't normally actually go to downtown on a Saturday night, and I actually did, and I had a good time. So I think we need to be very cautious in this topic, and I don't really feel like tackling it at this point, just so everybody knows where I stand. That's it.
Thank you. Councilman Laird.
Mr. City Manager, we got to get a police station built. And I don't know what our first step is, but I knew every meeting when I said to you to balance the budget. Remember when I did that? You, by golly, got that budget balanced. So I'm hoping it's 2 out of 2 that we put in motion what we're going to have to do to build a police station. And I know it isn't something we're going to do overnight, but it's something this city needs to have done. And I would like to see the thing in motion starting in this year, even maybe this quarter, what we have to do to get that going. I know it's not an easy thing, but you have a brilliant staff, and I know you're going to get it figured out. This job is a job that I take from the standpoint of applying the principles legal principles to it, because when I read the Wyoming Constitution and statutes of the state of Wyoming, cities were created by a legislature, and we were given the powers by the legislature. We weren't given powers to deal with certain kinds of things. And quite frankly, this resolution is weighing very heavily on me. I don't need anybody to sympathize with me about it, but I can see both sides of it. As a lawyer, I could argue either side of this situation. And I would like to see the city put the, I think it's a policy more than a resolution or an ordinance, but the policy of the city could be placed on our website. I mentioned that in an earlier meeting, that's a policy decision by this city to give the wording that I think people that are wanting this resolution would approve of. Because it's really more of a policy. It's not, a resolution. I got a resolution one time because my ex-wife was the mayor, and I got a resolution for being a nice hockey coach. Or Boy Scouts get resolutions and different things like that. And someday the mayor, he'll probably get his own resolution. And so I don't know where we should elevate that. Whether we should elevate it to a resolution, keep it as a policy, or go forth with an ordinance that asks for a public vote on it. That's something I think that we should look at. And we should also look at whether really we should revisit this and have a public hearing. Anybody I would see that would be wearing a swastika on their clothing, I wouldn't be very kind to them. I don't know that you can arrest them for that, but it's a personal affront to me. And the country I live in. So I wouldn't probably be easy with my words on swastika wearing people. And I think that's my right of free speech to say that. The food truck issue, food trucks serve good food, and I always think they're vibrant, and I would like to figure out a way to have this handled, Mr. Manager, fairly to all. I understand the business owners, their investments, and the taxpayers. I think everybody ought to pay taxes. If people aren't paying taxes, I don't think they should be able to step up and just get whatever they want. They got to pay taxes. And they should pay a fee and all of that. I don't even know what that should be, but I'm hoping that you're going to come up with that particular resolution. And I appreciate all the people coming here and saying what they've said. I think that's very important for us as councilmen to hear from the public, because I was enlightened on both sides tonight and with what everyone has said. And I appreciate it, and I thank you all.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Your Honor. I can't add anything to what Councilman Humphrey stated as far as my reasons for not supporting the public hearing. I think we have heard all of the arguments repetitively, and I doubt very much that we would hear something new during a public hearing. And I do encourage people to continue that process since, as Councilman Johnson points out, we are all easily contacted. I do have some committee reports that I will save till next week. I just think that this is how our system is supposed to work. We are elected, and if we're out of step with our constituents, we can be unelected. And that is the system that we have, and it is our job as these elected representatives to wrestle with very difficult decisions, such as the one before us on this resolution. So we will do that in 2 weeks. And that's all I have to say this evening. Thank you.
Councilman Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It'd be one thing to dovetail on the last information that we just heard. When you think about having a bad day, in the last 6 weeks, 6 police officers have been shot to death in the United States. 2 of them in Colorado, the most recent one last night. And then on top of that, just off the top of my head, 6 others wounded by gunfire in our neighboring state of Colorado. But we all have bad days. We all have hard times. It's a very unique and different thing when you put on body armor and you go out and stand between what would do harm and what would do good in our communities. So I would like to leave you with that and pass it on.
Thanks, Councilman. Councilman Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last week, we had our first meeting for the year with the Respect Our River campaign. Got things all kind of lined out to do some things. Well, we'll be meeting starting in probably in March. We'll be meeting monthly. And this, again, will be regarding getting life vests out. There's also going to be the spring cleanup along the river on May 19th. And as much as I hate to remind everybody about the food truck issue, they're going to have the Food Truck Friday event, which is not a problem because it's not on city property. And they're going to do that June 22nd, July 13th, August 3rd, and September 7th. So anyway, we can go and enjoy them out there. The other thing, last week I attended, well, it was a week before actually, since we kind of had a week off last week. On January 24th, the Forward Casper CADA update meeting. We heard reports from the various marketing committees, and they gave their 2018 targets. The Medical Committee, the Energy Committee, Manufacturing, Finance, and Technology Committee. So that was all good to hear, and got some good things happening, and hopefully we can keep it up. Great.
Councilman Johnson.
Thank you. As far as this resolution goes, I really wish that we could stop putting labels on each other and separating ourselves into various groups, because we're all human beings. I'm of the mindset that this issue is covered legally in a that is enforceable by law. The 14th Amendment talks about equal protection for all humans under the law. Article 1, Section 2 of the Wyoming Constitution says that every member of the human race is equal. I understand why some people want to be recognized, set aside, but I honestly don't think it's healthy, and I don't think it's necessary. I think legally we are already covered. I also believe in somebody's right to discriminate. They have a right to a First Amendment right to believe what they want to believe and say what they want to say. You're not going to legislate morality. You're not going to legislate somebody to change their mind on religious beliefs. That's not going to happen. You can pass as many laws and resolutions as you want, but you're always going to have that issue because that's just how humans are. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple things. First, I want to kind of just go back to Councilman Johnson. Today he was recognized. He's been at the Sheriff's Department for 10 years?
Almost 11.
Almost 11 years, and got recognized today at the County Commission and for being working in the at the jail and the Sheriff's Department for 10 years, almost 11 years. So I just wanted to make sure he knew that he's doing that. So I want to recognize that. Just a couple updates from my things going on. The youth town hall meeting we did last Thursday was at the YMCA. It was fantastic. We had about 25 youth or so show up from around the community. The chief was there, and it was wonderful. And some of the comments that came from that, kind of from what Councilman Walsh was even saying, how can we get our police officers into the community and being a part of that and what they're doing. And so the chief's doing a great job. Meeting with the young people was fantastic, and the kids really appreciated that. So I wanted to commend him. Also DDA, Kevin was down there also talking about downtown and how to get young people involved in the downtown. Art 321 was there. It was fantastic. We had a great time with that. Lots of ideas that were generated from that, and we'll be doing that, continuing on. Also, Chief Spicer was there as well, brought his son, but he was also able to sit in on some of the conversation, so I appreciate you being there as well and seeing that. So we've got a dynamic group of people working in this community, so thank you so much, you guys. Friday, I'll be at CCA Frontier having lunch with the kids, with middle schoolers. Will be, so pray for me. I'd love middle schoolers. I have 2 middle schoolers. So I'll be there Friday for lunch. On Thursday, I'll be signing a proclamation on K2 in the morning, their morning show for Random Acts of Kindness Week. We know that we need more random acts of kindness in this community, so I'll be doing that as well. One of the things that I think that we tend to struggle with is understanding our differences, and sometimes our differences aren't always the same. And so this resolution that's coming up is something that I hope is an opportunity for dialogue. And if we close ourselves off without dialogue and walking away from it, respecting each other's opinions and understanding this is where we come from, then we've lost. I think somewhere in politics and in government we've lost humanity. And I think when we try to remember what humanity is, and looking at everybody in their eyes and to see who they are, and to understand that we are going to disagree. But I think having dialogue, disagreeing, but also understanding each other. There's some young people in here now, and I have always said that our hope is the future and the young people. And if we are that example for them, they're going to continue to take that and do great things for us in the community and in the future. What brings you guys down here, by the way? Did you guys lose a bet? What brought you guys down? Just wanted to listen in. I commend you guys for coming down here on your own to come do that. I appreciate that. Yeah. Good for you guys. Yeah. So that's all I have. The next meeting of the City Council will be a work session to be held at 4:30 on Tuesday, February 13th, 2018 in the Council's meeting room, and a regular Council meeting will be held at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, February 20th, 2018 in the Council chamber rooms. Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins, seconded by Councilman Johnson. Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Meeting is adjourned. Hey, you guys, come up here real quick.